The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
You know what I'm talking about, baby. It's time to keep your mission on your mind, your mission. He is Michael Coleman, of course, with the Montgomery Area Food Bank. They do wonderful work down there. MAFB.org if you'd like to help this holiday season. He is Michael Coleman. He has been with the Jimmy Hill Mission. He's run businesses, non-for-profit and otherwise. And now, of course, he's the CEO of the Montgomery Food Bank, covering 35 counties in the great state of Alabama. First of all, happy holidays to you, my friend. How are we doing? Everything good?
Yep, doing great. It's really a great time of year to be thinking about your neighbor. Of course,
yes.
we keep that around the clock, 365. But yeah, we're doing great, and we're happy about our food distribution. Unhappy about the fact that there's so many people in need, but we just fight each battle each day.
No doubt. And, you know, if something tells me that 2023 is going to be just an outstanding year for all of us. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm a hopeful guy, and I'm a silver lining guy, so I think that's going to happen. I saw a really interesting story here on Mission Minded. By the way, you can hear this show 5 days a week, 10 a.m. Central Time, all over the Birmingham area, and certainly the majority of our listeners within 100 miles of the Birmingham, Hoover area, but also all over the United States and the world. And we greatly appreciate everyone downloading the TKR app, and wherever you get your podcast, just search Tony Kurre Radio Podcast, and we're on every major podcast industry. If you've got a podcast place you go, you will find us. Black women are worn out from discrimination in corporate America. They're leaving to launch their own businesses, creating a hole for talent across industries. That from Insider Magazine. I wanted to go a little bit broader than that, and I found some interesting numbers, and I'll just give you the answer so you sound brilliant. How's that? But approximately 50, this number blows me away because I'd had side businesses, but I mean, it was like spinning records for proms. I mean, it was a side hustle. It wasn't really a business. But 55% of adults in the United States have started their own business at some time. Does that sound really high to you? Is that surprising to you? And 26% of Americans have started two businesses.
Well, that does seem a little high, but, you know, I know several people in my, you know, that I go to church with or in my social community with, and a lot of them, you know, if I sat down and thought about it, probably a lot of them are in that. I would say, yeah, I guess maybe about half have started their own businesses. It's a lot more common. And the good thing about, you know, our country is it's easy to start a business. I heard this when I was young, which was the wonderful thing about America is that you can go out and create your own job. Mm-hmm. You're not dependent on somebody. If you have a skill set and you're willing to work hard, and you just have to figure out how to put that, create a business model for that, but you can go out and create your own value and create your own brand.
No doubt. 99.9% of all businesses in the United States are small businesses. That comes out to about 31.7 million small businesses compared to 20,000 big businesses. And listen, I think it's interesting, you know, if you're making something special, whether it's a candle or a widget or whatever it is, and you have a friend, you're sitting around the garage one night drinking beers and you're discussing things, and someone says, you know, you ought to sell those things. Maybe put them in the 7-Eleven down the street, or maybe create your own, side hustle type of thing with something on the side of the road, whatever it is. And the business kind of falls in your lap. That is certainly a business. I don't know how many people would pay taxes on those type of things, but that's certainly a business. If you're making any money on the side that is taxable, right, that's considered a business. I want to go a little broader though. I want to go, hey, you have a great idea, and this is something we described many times and discussed here on Mission Minded. A business where you actually have to have a business plan. You have to have perhaps some capital. Maybe it's a brick and mortar. Of course, I would venture to guess, and you probably know this better than I do, out of those 31.7 million small businesses, I don't know how many now are internet businesses. You don't have to leave the house.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing about technology is you can do, you know, you see this all the time where people now are just selling old things, you know, just they're buying it on one market and turning around and flipping it on another market, and they're making a living doing it. And I'm just like, God bless them. You know, I'm for anybody who can honestly turn over $1, create a market, create a demand, fill that demand. I'm very pro business. And again, I think it needs to be ethical, and I think it needs to be good. But I think anything there's just so many possibilities. And lots of times, we think some of the oddest ways. I've heard of this where there's this foot website, and people make a living by putting pictures up on the internet of their feet. Yeah. And people buy those, or they.
It's called a fetish. It's called a fetish, Mike.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I was trying to be nice about it, but I was like, it's amazing the things people can do to make a living with technology nowadays.
No, I think you bring up a really interesting point. Maybe not so much the foot fetish website, but there are 8 billion people on this earth. And if I think for the most part, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we wanted to be as broad. I mean, how we had stores called general stores, right? We wanted to be as broad, right, and take care of as many people as we possibly could. Now with the internet, where you can reach anybody in Lillehammer or Mexico City or Charlotte, North Carolina by 3 minutes down the road, you can now afford to go really narrow and deep. I mean, we got these Facebook groups, divorced women over 55 who have pit bulls. I mean, and you'll have 100,000 people follow you. But it's just a matter of using the algorithmic analysis, if you will, of finding those people and getting them to follow you. And I think people like to be part of smaller groups. But hell, there's not a small group anymore when you can reach out on the internet and reach that many people, right?
That's right. So, my wife and I have a boutique. And a lady runs that for us. And it was in a small little town right there on the interstate. So most of the business was interstate traffic. And when we took it over, we're like, well, we need to have an internet presence and just not rely on local customers and just people passing through. And then COVID, that was pre-COVID. And then COVID shut it absolutely down because there was no travel. And so the overhead of the business was just too much to maintain with no customer base. And so we went to internet only, and so we turned it over to a lady to help run us who had more expertise in that area than my wife and I did, and had more time to do it. And a lot of our customers started growing across the country. Wow. Because we can post it out there on Google, and so they'll do a Google search for a certain brand, and here a little bitty boutique pops up in South Alabama, and they go in there and find it. And hey, that's a competitive price. Boom, they buy it, and we're shipping it out. I saw some to Puerto Rico. We sell it to all the states. And I'm like, without the technology, it would just be who came. I mean, our business would have been shut down permanently by COVID, and there wouldn't have been any internet or, hey, I'm going to sell to other. It would have been done. It'd have been over with back in the day.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the positive signs of what COVID did. And it certainly worked for my business because I had more people staying at home. I had more people searching the internet looking for music and, of course, unique programming. And we shot up because people weren't sitting in their offices and they couldn't listen to the radio when they're sitting in their cubicles. He's Michael Coleman from, of course, the Montgomery Area Food Bank. They do wonderful work, mafb.org. Getting ready for the holidays. This is a show called Mission Minded, keeping your mind, your mission, your mind. You can hear it 5 days a week here on TKR. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net too if you had some email questions. So I'm going to ask you a very broad question. I even asked you this question before we started because it is a very broad question. But if in fact you are wanting to start a business, regardless whether it's a brick and mortar or an internet business, or I think you probably have to be both these days, and this was like you had to put a business plan together. Maybe you have to have some employees. What's the most important thing to the success of a small business? Is it the location? Is it the capital? Is it the idea? What do you think it is?
Well, I would say it's do your homework, and here's why. Because it could be any one of those things could kill your business. You could have a perfect location, but not have a product that's in demand. You could, and the vice versa, you could have a great product, but have a really crummy location. So what I found is especially when you get into the nonprofit world, I think we've talked about, you have people that just have this desire to change the world. And I love that. And that's why so many people get into the nonprofit space is they know they're not going to make tons of money, but hey, I get to make a difference in the world, and I get to go to work and make a difference in the world. And I'm not just selling widgets. I'm actually, changing lives. And so a lot of people want to get into this space, but then, they have an entrepreneurial spirit and background, and that was me. And so when I started my own nonprofit, the best advice somebody gave me was to sit down and do a business plan. And I was like, well, I had never done a business plan. Do you have an example? And it was kind of a rough example, but what it did was it forced me to answer all those questions, the why. And what I found out was the reason that was so important is because when I went out to sell my business or sell the nonprofit or market the nonprofit, however you want to discuss it or label it, I had to answer those questions because you can't expect the public to come alongside of you to a cause that you don't fully understand or grasp what's going into it. And so I had to sit down and think about, well, what's the need for, here's my idea. What's the need for that idea in our community? Where's the need the greatest? And then I got to connect with people who also can be convinced that there's the greatest need, enough for them to give up their hard-earned money to support that. So there's just so many, and any one of those could have been a failure big enough to bring the nonprofit down. My particular one was helping people with overcome barriers to get into the employment world. And so when you're trying to sell, it's so funny. I do my best to stay out of the political. I've talked about this on previous shows. Nonprofits, the importance of being very apolitical, because you're going to have people on the right, people on the left that you have to. But when you talk about things like workforce development, you know, you could talk to somebody on the left and you could talk to somebody on the right, and they're both going to have different perspectives on workforce development. And so it was so funny tackling that issue. And I'm like, is this an issue that appeals to all people of all faiths, of all community members? Is this something that anybody could support? And the idea of helping people in poverty and trapped in poverty and to acquire the skills to get into the workforce was something that people could rally around. But I had to go through the mental gymnastics of where's it going to be? Is there enough need? How much money is it going to take to do this? And the truth of the matter is, I was very blessed through that, but I probably didn't have all those answers fully. I mean, some of it was a step out in real faith that part of my abilities, part was, trusting in my faith that, hey, I'm doing something good and people are going to come alongside of me. But I didn't have all the answers up front.
Yeah, he's Michael Coleman. This is called Mission Minded. You can hear it 5 days a week here on TKR or wherever you get your podcast. I started my business about 3 years ago, and you were on board with me when I first came on. And of course, I had a lot of friends and family that were helping me out and my resources, and I've grown, and I would say it's successful to this point. But I also realized I had never started a business before. I knew what I was doing, and I realized I knew the product really well, but I didn't know how to run a business. And so I called it the golf tournament syndrome. You want to raise money for a charity, right? And you're like, we're going to get 50 guys on a Saturday. They're going to pay $100 a piece. That's $5,000. We're going to find a golf course to give it to us free, and we're going to raise $5,000 for this charity, and we're done. That's not how you run a golf tournament, because then all of a sudden, the golf tournament's not free. You may have rain. Then you got people wanting to do hole sponsorships. Then you're having silent auctions. What are you going to do for beverages? What are you going to, it goes on and on and on. And so much so now that you have businesses that have actually been created to run golf tournaments. If you had $1 million and you had a great idea and you could pay people to run your business, and not to say that's how you're running your boutique, but you got someone running your boutique and you don't have to worry about it. That's one thing. If you're hands-on, I think a lot of people just don't realize how much work and how much cost goes into associated cost when it comes to running a business. What would you say for a person who maybe has the financial wherewithal, they have a good idea, maybe we'll just go internet business. What's the biggest misperception about running your own business, you think?
Well, the people love, as a matter of fact, it was interesting, just from a human perspective, a human behavior perspective. When I was dealing with a lot of people who, again, were kind of trapped in poverty, they all had an entrepreneurial spirit in the sense of they loved the idea of running their own business. And so I began to say, well, wait a minute, is it that many people have a true entrepreneurial spirit, or what is it that appeals to them? And what I found out was what appealed to them is they get to keep all the money they earn and they get to be their own boss.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, yeah, there's some advantage. There's some advantages to that. But the things they had no understanding of was they have to accept all the risk.
Yep.
They're the ones that have to generate the income and the demand and market and all those other kind of things. And I remember when I started the nonprofit, we did not yet have our office set up. So we were writing curriculum, and I was putting together a website. And I mean, then you go from 1 minute of, once you move into the offices, I would pick up a cockroach. I'd be the janitor 1 minute. I'd be in the classroom teaching. I'd be calling somebody, doing an interview. So I'd be the spokesman. I mean, you're all over the place. So you have to constantly be learning and understanding things like marketing and how do I promote, because the challenge is, let's say you don't have the skill set. You may be great at business, but that doesn't mean you need to be the person on the commercial promoting your business.
True.
Or you may not know how to do the social media post, or you may not be good with customer service in terms of, you may not be a warm and friendly person. So what I would suggest is if people look through that and come up with a business plan and look through all the things and then recognize what your strengths and weaknesses are. And if the strength is, hey, I've got a vision, I know exactly where I want that. I know exactly how to grow this business in terms of, the next phases of the operation. But I really don't know anything about social media. I really don't know. That's where you begin to hire expertise, or when you don't have the money like I didn't, you just have to put the grind in and go in there and learn enough to learn how to navigate those areas. Talk to the experts, talk to friends, even solicit volunteer help.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just so much out there. One is very difficult for one person to know how to effectively do everything from your finances and your QuickBooks. Yep. To turn around and promoting, doing commercials on social media, to then handling the nuts and bolts of running the business and the cost of that. I mean, there's just so many areas that can blow up so quick. And go ahead.
No, we're not trying to destroy people's ideas and their ideas of starting a small business. Go for it if that's something you want to do. I mean, it is the American dream. It was really cool, but what I don't think people realize, and I didn't realize it, and I'm still learning on the job, is, you have an idea, you think it's going to work, and then the business part of it comes into play. And let's be honest, the business part's not fun. I mean, the bookkeeping, the paying the taxes, the going 3 months without having a client pay their bill, those types of things. That's right. There's something to be said about getting paid every 2 weeks. And there's not a business person that is self-employed that wouldn't say, I miss those days, because, well, it's a difference between renting a house and buying a house. When you buy the house, everything's on you. When you're renting, you can pretty much just call somebody and tell them to fix it. So, I had a friend of mine, I still have a friend of mine who got into a franchise. He bought a Sneaky Pete's franchise about 25 years ago, and it's down on Highway 31. And I go in that place once a week, and it doesn't matter what day of the week I go in there. He's 62 years old. He's in there flipping burgers and making hot dogs. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, but he loves what he does. I said, do you ever take any time off? He's like, no. And I said, why? And he goes, because, and his wife works there too. He said, we really enjoy running this business. He said, we really enjoy, we have a great lineage with Sneaky Pete's. We know it's going to sell itself. It's a great location. And we enjoyed the work part of it. And that's a wonderful thing. You better love what you do if you're going to get into your own business, or it better just be taken off for sure. Michael Coleman here. Go ahead.
I'll throw this in too while you were talking about that. I mean, no truer words have ever been spoken than you better love what you're doing, because you're going to have to put the work into it. But if I could offer one more bit of advice, and that is surround yourself with people who will speak truth into your life.
Yes.
And so when I did my business plan, is I send it out to all the people that I know, not necessarily that knew what business I wanted, but I said, here's my business plan. Pretend, you go through it and you just rip it apart. And they did. And it's painful to get it back. And it's just, it's all chewed up. But what they did was they told me all the questions that I was leaving unanswered. And so they saved me by forcing me to deal with those questions right then. Because then I had to after I looked at all their responses, I'm like, okay, I've got to be able to answer that question, or I just need to stop doing what I'm doing. And so it forced me to have to think through all the challenging pieces. And so while it wasn't fun, it's never fun when somebody says, well, your idea, it may not be good in this area, or your product is, maybe you love your product way more than the average person does. I mean, you need people to speak truth in your life. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to accept their advice, but you need to certainly consider alternatives or different perspectives so that you can be prepared to deal with those possibilities.
And according to the Better Business Bureau, this is really interesting. Out of the businesses that were started back in 2021, that's the last stats they have, 90% of all startups fail eventually. 25% of those fail within the first year. It drives me crazy when I see someone that raises over $1 million in capital. They've got a location. It could be a bar, a restaurant, whatever. And they don't allow to have any money left in the coffers. And once it hits a dead spot, they just close. And I see the work and the sweat equity they put into these businesses, and within 6 months, they're closed. And it just bums me out because sometimes these are people's dreams. I mean, they don't have the money, and they owe that money back.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, that's also, and it's interesting. They asked the question, what's the biggest reasons why startups fail? And in this order, marketing number 1, team number 2, finances number 3, tech number 4, operations number 5, and legal number 6. And so as a business owner, I've been part of all 6 of those, and those all suck. You look at those because if you're a small business and you're making sweaters and you think you can sell them for $50 a piece because everyone in your family's bought one, and you're like, marketing? Well, I mean, this is word of mouth, right? Word of mouth is gonna
right.
word of mouth's gonna be fine. And what are you talking about? And then you talk about team. Well, I got a great team. Finances. Well, we'll make enough sweaters. We'll make enough money. We'll keep the money rolling. Tech. I don't even know what part of that is. And then of course, operations and the legal aspect can be a killer as well. But just talk about those failures real quick and just how intensive you have to be. Again, we're not talking about a guy who starts a lemonade stand on the side of the road and is making a couple $100 a week and he's doing okay. Right. We're talking about something that you're actually building to live off of.
Well, and I will tell you, let me pull this into the nonprofit world a little bit because it's so funny. I was just having a conversation this morning because I talk about these kind of things all the time. I was just having a conversation this morning about the importance of volunteers in terms of marketing. So for a long, long time, and there's still many nonprofits that do this that depend heavily on volunteers, but they look at it from an operational standpoint. So let's say, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say volunteers are needed at food banks because they need boxes. They need to take the assorted, donated, and make same boxes. Okay, so you can do that and say, okay, the goal is 300 boxes. You bring a group in, they get 300 boxes put together. All right, thanks, appreciate it, and they're out the door. So if your goal is on your product rather than understanding who's there, because what we've talked about is how much work is done is secondary to the experience that they have, and here's why. I could have 10 volunteers come in, and I could just be focused on the boxes, and I can just grind them down. Okay, boom, we can't stop till we get 300 boxes. We got it. Well, they all leave, and they're like, yeah, it's hard work, But if you bring 10 people in and say, here's what we're doing, we're trying to feed, these boxes will feed X amount of people. You got music playing, you've got it's all very organized and very clear, and everybody feels fulfilled when they leave there. Then what you've got is 10 ambassadors that you're fixing to turn out into the community. They're going to speak about what a great time they had volunteering. And so each one of those has its own community that it's going back to. And so they're going to spread the word of, hey, if I have extra money, I'm going to give to these people. Or if somebody sees me on TV with a commercial, they're like, you know what? I heard Mary talk about she had a really good time at the food bank. Let's get involved and let's give and so we're not looking at it from how many boxes they can pack. We're looking at it from how many ambassadors can we produce. But that's the difference of looking at something just trying to get work done versus seeing a bigger vision. And that was something I didn't know at first that I had to learn over time. And it's the kind of mistakes that lots of times when you put all your money into one project, like you said, these people that have saved up their whole life and they open up a small business. Well, they don't know those things. And by the time they learn those things, the business is gone. They don't get a second chance.
No, they don't.
To learn those things. And
no, Michael, great stuff. We're up against it. I was waiting for you to say that word, ambassadors. I've heard that word so many times. You must have ambassadors. Those are people that are willing for no pay to talk about how great your product is. And you just need to be nice to them. And these aren't people that you need to pay. These aren't people that they don't necessarily have to be family or friends, but they have to get the word out. And particularly as big as social media is now, that's your marketing part. They can get the word out. You find a couple people that get 10 or 15,000 followers, it can blow up in a big time. Hey, listen, Michael, we're up against it, man. We'll catch up next week. Happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for the great show. As always, tell people how they can find you.
Yeah, you can go on mafb.org, and if you need to reach out to me directly, you're welcome to do so. Thank everybody for listening this year. It's just continues to be a blessing. I hope everybody has a great holidays.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.